is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and Andy Kostka. Paul back in Baltimore. Andy out on the West Coast in Washington. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
Still,
you went from
hanging out.
Washington to California, back to Washington, and you're going to go hiking. This is just an absolute bonanza of a week for you.
Yeah, no, it was a great road trip. The Coliseum was fun.
One final time.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I have a habit of, enjoying things that other people don't enjoy. It's the hipster wannabe culture, perhaps. I liked the Coliseum. I thought it was great.
That's, I mean, you and Kevin Brown had some nice things to say about it on the Masson broadcast too, but it's like Rock Kabako of MassonSports.com. He loves Tropicana Field, which is utterly mind-boggling to me, considering it's everybody's least favorite ballpark. I think he views it from a media perspective because it's easy to walk around. For the Coliseum, what is it about the Coliseum that it makes it at all enticing? Because it looks disgusting on TV. It is historic.
It is historic. It has, it's the last dive bar in baseball. Every ballpark now is so chic and modern and caters to the it really caters to the high paying fan.
Sure.
The Coliseum seems like it still feels like an extension of Oakland, which was a great city, by the way. Nothing but good things to say. I know
the Coliseum caters to no fans. It's clearly
that's the sad thing is, Oakland has fans, and they would have a lot of fans if the ownership was different, and they had taken care of the organization in a different way.
Sure,
they would have a ton of fans. And instead, it's really hard to get behind a team that really has a lot of quad A players, and is leaving
and a team that also is an ownership group that is talking about how desperately they want to leave and go to Vegas. I if I were in their shoes, those Oakland A's fans, I wouldn't want to show up to that ballpark where they're not investing resources and they clearly want to leave. I totally understand it from their perspective.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, on the other side of things, the Orioles have a phenomenal ballpark. They have a phenomenal team, and a team that took 2 of 3 from the Oakland A's. They also took 2 of 3 from the Seattle Mariners. So they finished that West Coast swing with a 4-2 record, and they have an off day today before they come back home for the final week before the All-Star break. And Andy, we're going to talk today about that All-Star roster for the American League and some guys that were left off that All-Star roster. Some more egregious snubs than others. And by the end, we'll tell you who we think our most egregious snub is from the roster, because the Orioles end up with 3 All-Stars at the moment. Now, the All-Star rosters could change because guys drop out, guys get hurt. Orioles could still have more than 3 by the time we get to the actual game itself. But at the moment, the 3 All-Stars that they have, Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman, both those guys are starters. That was revealed last week. And then yesterday, Corbin Burns is the only pitcher added. So you look at the Orioles roster as a whole. They have one of the best teams in baseball. They're 3 games up on the Yankees in the American League East. And from a macro perspective, you'd say this Orioles team deserves to have more than 3 All-Stars just based on their winning percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very surprising, especially when you look, the Philadelphia Phillies have 7 All-Stars, and it's like, they're a great team, obviously. They probably deserve 7 All-Stars, but Baltimore is in that same class, leading the majors in home runs, in runs scored. This offense has been off the charts. So very surprising. Only 3 right now. Yeah. It can change. Cal Tucker made it, is injured right now. So, we already know there's probably going to be 1 change. Doesn't necessarily go to an O. That's just, just opens the spot. So we'll see how it shakes out. But Post game yesterday, asked Grayson Rodriguez about it. Just was like, how surprising is this? And he kind of had a smirk and said that he would like to say some things about it, but he can't.
Held his
Uh,
tongue.
and then kind of just finished with, disappointed about how it worked out. I imagine the things he would like to say are very pointed, and we're going to get into it right now
Yeah.
about why there's probably a case for at least one or two more, if not more.
And the Orioles, I think part of the reason that they are where they are right now is the depth that they have in their organization. So they have the top end stars, but they also have the depth behind them. So I think that's what speaks to where they are at this point in the season as Andy appears to be frozen. So I'm going to hop him out and come back in. Andy, any can you hear me at this point, Andy?
All good.
Your face is frozen at the moment, so maybe you hop out for a minute or two, and I will, and then you come back. All right. So as we wait for Andy, the thing that bothers me is when people say, these guys were snubbed from the All-Star game without mentioning who they should have been replacing. Because you look at the rosters as a whole, and I don't want to. I'm not here to bash anybody. I'm not here to say that nobody that got an All-Star nod is not deserving. These are all great players to even be mentioned for an All-Star nod, and these guys deserve these nods. It is a great career accomplishment that they get these all-star recognition. You just look at the numbers side by side, and it's hard to make a case for some of the guys that made it over these Orioles. And I think you look at the 6 finalists that the Orioles had as position players. They end up with 2 starters out of that group, Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson, and then 4 other guys, and I add in 1 pitcher that I think all should have been considered at least, and some have better cases than others. And I'll go through those guys one by one. The one that I think has the least strong case, has the weakest case of all of these guys, is Anthony Santander, because you look at the 3 guys that got in over him in the outfield. You already had Aaron Judge, obviously. You had your other 2 starters, and then the 3 backup outfielders that you had. Jarren Duran for Boston, who's having a great season defensively. He's got 4.7 baseball reference WAR. That is phenomenal. You have Kyle Tucker for Houston, also having a great season, more offensive than defensive, but he can play all 3 outfield positions. He's a annual All-Star. He's going to be there. And Riley Green for Detroit is also having a great season. All of these guys have higher WAR. All of these guys have better numbers. So I don't think Anthony Santander, who has a 1.9 baseball reference WAR, was hitting 235, had 23 numbers, and 803 OPS. I don't think Anthony Santander, as Andy rejoins us here. Andy, I think Anthony Santander probably had the weakest case of any of the All-Star snubs, only because I think Kyle Tucker, Riley Green, and Jarren Duran all had strong cases to be in this game over him.
Yeah, 23 home runs is incredibly impressive, tied 4th in the major leagues with that many. So Santander has produced at a high level. He still gets it done in that regard. But the average, which I still care about average, I was debating this with Jacob Calvin-Meyer of the Baltimore Sun in the press box yesterday, and he was talking about how, hey, average doesn't really matter. He has a 803 OPS. He has 23 homers. I still think average matters. And, so yeah, he has a huge power potential. But he's really not at this point of the season. He's gotten better. His average is rising. But still, that was probably too hard for voters to overlook, the fact that he has a 235.
Yeah, and those 3 guys are all better defenders than Anthony Santander. I know he, is fine in right field, but fine is not all-star level, defense that he's putting up there in right field. The guys that I think have a slightly stronger case, Ryan O'Hearn, tough to get in as a DH because there are so few spots. And he actually made it ridiculously close with Yordan Alvarez. And I tweeted out at Paul Mancano, give me a follow, the side-by-side of the voting for Yordan Alvarez and for Ryan O'Hearn. And Alvarez finished with 52% to grab the starting spot at DH and Ryan O'Hearn at 48%. The fact that Ryan O'Hearn was even in consideration, Yordan Alvarez deserved it, but it is a testament to Orioles fans for voting as often and as frequently as they did in order to get Ryan O'Hearn that close to the starting spot, because Yordan Alvarez has been the better player. He has put up better statistics this season, but it is the Orioles fans who have really rallied to the support of these players. So that's more the point that I was making when I tweeted out that graphic. And it is an impressive showing for Orioles fans to get Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson in this game and to make it close in so many other areas. That being said, I think David Fry, who is the backup DH, Cleveland, he's a great story this year. He started out the season really hot. The numbers have dipped slightly. He has the same amount of WAR as Ryan O'Hearn, fewer games, but O'Hearn has more homers. He's got a lower batting average, lower OPS plus. So I think David Fry probably deserved this nod.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting just because David Fry is kind of that part-time player as well. Doesn't always is not always in the lineup. O'Hearn is not usually in the lineup against lefties.
Right.
So they're kind of similar in that area. I think Ryan O'Hearn can be really proud of himself that 2 years ago he was DFA'd, and now here he is, a centerpiece really of a lineup that is leading the AL East. That's a, even if he doesn't, he's not most likely not going to be in the All-Star game unless something shakes out. This is a pretty cool thing for him to even be in consideration. David Fry having a great year. It's kind of comes out in the wash. That their two stats are pretty similar. It's hard to pick apart which one really. It's kind of a toss up, and it goes to Cleveland.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of talk online about what a great story David Fry is, and maybe he got a little bit more appreciation from fans or from voters because of that. But like you said, Ryan O'Hearn has just as good a story, going from being DFA'd and having the bounce back season that he had in 2023, and to even be considered for an All-Star nod this year is incredible.
Yeah, obviously, what? Let me speak English. David Fry would have been chosen by, that was a player vote to get him in. So, which is interesting that, just around the league, more of these O's players didn't receive recognition from other players, which is interesting. They had the recognition from fans. The fans showed up and didn't win all of the phase 2 voting, but there was a lot of players that made it to phase 2. It's just interesting that we'll get into Clay Holmes in a second. That was a MLB league decision.
I'm saving that one.
But yeah, I was saving that one for later. But yeah, the player vote just didn't go in Baltimore's way.
Yeah. So the other two position players I have here, Ryan Mountcastle and Jordan Westberg, both these guys finalists in phase 1 of the voting. And Mountcastle, 1.7 WAR, hitting 286, 12 homers, 766 OPS. Josh Naylor, another Cleveland player, gets in ahead of Mountcastle. Mountcastle's the better defender than Josh Naylor. He has higher WAR. He's got a higher batting average, but Naylor has more home runs, higher OPS plus. You chalk this one up to blame the left field wall, because if Mountcastle had a shorter left field wall, maybe he hits a few more tanks and maybe he's in, but Naylor has the better offensive statistics.
Yeah, it's not always just offense that gets a player in, but frequently it is. And Naylor's had a great year, so it's really hard to be upset about this. As you said, Mountcastle, if maybe there wasn't Mount Baltimore over there in left field, his stats would be a little higher. I can't, so many times at Camden Yards, he hits a deep ball and he is left staring up at the heavens, wondering, why did Mike Elias and the Orioles front office decide to push this ball back?
Yeah.
They did it for the pitching, of course, but it has impacted Ryan Mountcastle.
Instead of looking up at the heavens, he should really just look up to the 8th floor of the warehouse and into Sigmaidel's office and just give him an quizzical look. All right, the two biggest snubs here, I think, Andy, that you could make a case for: Jordan Westberg and Craig Kimbrel. Let's start with Westberg. 2.8 baseball reference WAR, hitting 282 coming into yesterday. 14 homers, 49 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, and 839 OPS, a 140 OPS plus. The guys that got in over him, some of them had better cases. Bobby Witt Jr. obviously is having a phenomenal season. If he wasn't getting outshined by Gunnar Henderson, we'd be talking more about him. Carlos Correa also having a very good season so far, hitting over 300. Rafael Devers, by the way, hit a pitch last night on Sunday Night Baseball against the Yankees that was a 1.5 feet outside the strike zone for a monster home run to center field. He has less WAR according to Baseball Reference, but he's got more homers. He's got a higher batting average. He's got a higher OPS plus. So I think Rafael Devers deserved to get that spot there. The one that I have the biggest issue with is Marcus Semien. Phenomenal player. Has put up incredible numbers over the course of his career. He's a world champion. He has less WAR, fewer homers, half as many stolen bases, and he came into yesterday batting .232 with a 93 OPS plus, which means he is below league average in OPS. He plays great defense, and that has helped his WAR, but defense alone and name brand alone, legacy value, does not mean that he is deserving of this spot over Jordan Westberg.
Yeah, that was a shocking one, wasn't it? Westberg, obviously, Westberg plays second base and third base, so really and shortstop, so really could be at any of these infield spots. I have no issue with the three, names that you mentioned before. Devers is a great player. I am shocked by Marcus Semien. It is a brand name pick. What it really is that they did not want the home team Texas Rangers to have one All-Star, so they gave him a second.
Right.
And
the world champion, you want to reward the champs. They had the entire infield last year in the All-Star game, so I think they've been rewarded enough.
Yeah, this one is honestly kind of a slap in the face to this entire All-Star system. Like, how can you have a guy who is hitting .232 with a 670 OPS in the All-Star game? And I know people love to point his defense. Yes, his great defender. Again, this is a offensive showcase more times than not. And
you talked about batting average. I mean, he has neither the batting average nor the OPS, so it's not like you could make a case one way or the other.
Yeah, this one is mind-boggling, and it really comes down to wanting the Texas Rangers to have more guys, and maybe just people closing their eyes and saying, "Oh yeah, Marcus Semien, he's good,"
right?
And not thinking about the season. Shocking to me.
It's a bummer for Jordan.
Yeah, it's a real bummer for Jordan, who deserved it. I don't think many people expected such a great year from Jordan Westberg immediately. First full season, first time as a everyday player, hitting above 800 OPS with a high average, in there too. 14 homers. These are things that, when you saw him last year, he had such a good, rookie year. Hit 3 homers, maybe, so like the power had been there throughout his career, but just didn't show up in the majors. But man, it's showing up now, and he's had a phenomenal season. Great defensively, made a game-saving play on Friday night against Oakland. Most fans probably were not awake for that, but he charged a ball. That's a tricky play, and was able to charge that third and scoop a short hop and flung it to to first for the third out and stranded a runner at third base to keep the 3-2 lead. That was incredibly important, first off. And yesterday he bobbled a ball at second base that probably should have been an error. So he's not infallible. I don't mean to
Sure.
paint a picture, but yeah, this was a shock that Jordan Westberg didn't make it.
Yeah, and the hope is he's only 25, and the kind of year that he's having, he's definitely showing that he deserves to be a key piece of this team's future. The hope is he's going to get an all-star nod at some point in the future. It's just frustrating that he puts up the kind of first half that he did and to not receive the kind of recognition that he deserves there. On the pitching side, I saw some talk about Grayson Rodriguez. I know he had a very good start yesterday right up until the end. He's putting up a very good season. I don't know if it's all-star caliber at this point, and I think by the end of the year, you'll look back and say he's had a great year. Right now, he's got a 3.52 ERA. I don't have a big qualm with him not being an all-star. The bigger issue to me is Craig Kimbrel not getting in on the reliever side, because yesterday he notched his 23rd save. He's got a 2.10 ERA, 1 WAR according to Baseball Reference, a WHIP of 0.9, 13.6 Ks per 9, one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball right now. Shouldn't have gotten in over Emmanuel Clase or Kirby Yates, both very good relievers. Mason Miller with Oakland, maybe. Kimbrel has a lowered ERA, but he's got more saves in fewer innings. But Oakland needed an all-star, and Mason Miller was the best player on that team. And then Clay Holmes is the one that is utterly baffling. That is almost more shocking than the Marcus Semien one. He was a pick by the commissioner's office, according to Max Cerullo of the Boston Herald. This one just makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, it's shocking. This is another one. I had when I tweeted yesterday that Kimbrel should have been an all-star. And some fan tweeted me like, we've never seen him in a high leverage situation before. He has and we saw last year in the postseason that this is there have been in recent years, hiccups in those big moments. But if we're looking at we're looking at right now in the prism of 2024, and he has allowed 1 earned run in his last 21 innings. He has, the tied for third most saves in the major leagues. His WHIP is below 1. I mean, it's a phenomenal resume for an all-star appearance. What would have been his 10th, by the way, which is really a Hall of Fame resume at this point. So yeah, shocking. Mason Miller makes a heck of a lot of sense. Clay Holmes does not, and it's bizarre to me that I don't want to say New York bias, but it's bizarre to me that Clay Holmes got in as a commissioner's pick.
He's putting up a much worse season. I mean, Holmes has a higher ERA. He's got fewer strikeouts per 9. He's got fewer saves, and he has more blown saves and a much higher WHIP than Craig Kimbrel. There's not a stat out there that you can show me that shows that he's been better. And we have been at times, when it has been deserved, critical of Craig Kimbrel on this show. It's not like we are homers and we're saying that he's had a perfect season. He was bumped out of the closer's role for a time, month and a half ago, because he wasn't getting the job done. Ultimately, they use him in more lower leverage situations. They build him back up. They get his confidence back up. His stuff has looked a lot better over the last month, and he has become a dominant closer once again. He is putting up great strikeout numbers. His stuff looks a lot better. And Andy, all he does is be in high leverage situations. Maybe not a playoff game, but according to Baseball Reference, he has pitched in 26 high leverage situations this season, just 24 medium leverage. The role of a closer is to be in high leverage situations when the game is on the line. I know the Orioles at times tried to give him a little bit of a breather, but he's coming in there with a 3-run lead or less, and he has to get 3 outs, oftentimes against the middle of the order. And he's been getting the job done. Whether that continues over the second half of the season or not, whether it continues into October, that's not what this is about. This is about what he has done for the first half of the season, and the first
Right.
half of the season has been all-star caliber play.
Yeah, I think it's frustrating when people kind of forget the prism of what an all-star is.
Right.
It is how good were they in the first half of the season? That's what it is. And maybe that is an incorrect. Maybe in a perfect world, they'd be able to look at 162 games. They'd be able to factor in other things. But right now and forever, this has been the way it is. I mean, this is it's how good were they over the course of I guess 90 games would be the first half instead of 81. But this is one of those where you imagine that Kimbrel gets in once some starters drop out. They brought a lot of starting pitchers to the All-Star game. Some of them will drop out. Kimbrel deserves to be in. Just kind of a major shock that he wasn't in originally.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if people stopped paying attention in early May when he was bumped from the closer role and had a little bit of a, that was a tough week and a half that he had.
Yeah.
100%. And we've talked a lot about how, do we trust the guy in playoff situations? But over the course of the next 21 appearances, he has been as good as any relief pitcher in baseball, if not the best. So, yeah, surprise.
They got it wrong. And it's funny because last year he was an all-star with the Phillies, and he had a much worse first half. He had a 3.41 ERA at this point last year, had 14 saves compared to 23 this year. It's just kind of how things shake out oftentimes because all-star, like I said, it's not just in a vacuum. You look at the end of the season and say, why wasn't he an all-star this year? A lot of times guys will put up phenomenal stats. Like I think by the end of this season, we could look back at Grayson Rodriguez's year and say, why wasn't he an all-star? But you have to take into context the time in which this game takes place, the performances that they put up in the first half, and the other players that got in over him. And if there were other better players that got in over him, then we wouldn't be complaining. I'd say it sucks for Craig Kimbrel, but that this guy is deserving. The Clay Holmes one is baffling to me. No disrespect to Clay Holmes, but the commissioner's office just got the wrong pick there.
Yeah, I don't think Clay Holmes is listening to this podcast, so I don't think we have to worry. But if he is, hey,
good bulletin board material for him. Yeah,
it is bulletin. I mean, congrats to him. I mean, a good year. I mean, I'm not, 3 ERA, 19 saves. It's a fine season.
Yeah.
It's just it's not at the level that Kimbrel has reached right now.
Absolutely. Well, we have 1 week until the home run derby in which Gunnar Henderson is going to participate. And then we have 1 week and 1 day until the All-Star game itself. In the meantime, the Orioles are going to come home. They have 3 at home against the Cubs, 3 at home against the Yankees. Those are going to be critical games to decide who's going to have the AL East lead at the All-Star break. But in the meantime, Andy, are you going to go hiking? Are you going to come back to Baltimore at some point before the break here? Or are you just going to roll right into the break and take your time?
Maybe I'll never come back. That's
Honestly, look, Kyle Goon, columnist for the Baltimore Banner, I think about 8 days into his Europe trip was tempted by the idea. So talk to him about it.
Yeah, no, I was in Germany earlier. I was in Germany last month and never wanted to come home. Now I'm in Washington, the great state of, and never want to come home. So nothing against Baltimore. It's a good place to be, but sometimes it's pretty nice when you walk outside and it's not a swimming pool.
Yeah, I was going to say today's maybe not this week is a great place to be for Baltimore because it's 95 today, 96 tomorrow, 93 and rainy on Wednesday, then 92 and rainy on Thursday. So, boy, this is going to be a slop fest against the Cubs and the Yankees.
Yeah, I'll be back for the Yankee series to actually answer your question. And then,
good.
But do we have 2 minutes?
Can we
do? just wanted to mention, Gunnar and the home run derby.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, like, how do you think this is going to go? He has a lot of power. He has Buck Britton throwing to him, which is a great story.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, he's the AAA Norfolk manager for the O's. They first met when Gunnar was. Well, they probably, they met before this, but the first concentrated time that they were together was when Gunnar was 19 in 2020 at the alternate training site in Bowie, and they threw a lot of BP, and that's really one of the only things they could do besides live BPs, from pitchers, and so Buck really knows Gunner's swing, so it'll be interesting, just to see how this goes. And I talked to Buck last week, I guess it was, and he said that there's some nerves. He does not want to be the reason why Gunner doesn't win, because he knows that no matter how much Gunner says he just wants to compete, he wants to win. That's Gunner's mentality. So, what do you think, Paul? What do you hope to see?
I mean, I think it's great because I think Gunnar has the perfect swing for the home run derby, and I think it is a little bit of a myth that players can get their swings ruined by this home run derby. We've seen guys, I think a few years ago when Juan Soto's with the Nationals, he competes in the home run derby and it like fixes his swing, and he has a great second half. So it can go either way. Buck Britton, I've talked to several times over the years. What a phenomenal coach he is and what a phenomenal player developer he is. He's worked his way up through this organization, as several of their top prospects have as well. Got a great mentality, obviously the brother of Zach Britton. And I remember when Buck was the manager in Bowie and Gunnar Henderson was just a double-A Bowie player who is very, very shy, very nervous. We're doing an interview with Gunnar and he's looking directly into the camera. And I said, you don't have to look directly into the camera. But Buck Britton helps coach these guys up. He helps develop them as human beings in addition to as players. That being said, it is maybe one of the most thankless roles being the BP pitcher, being the home run derby pitcher, because all of the good pitches, nobody's going to say, wow, what a great pitch there by the pitcher for the home run derby. But all of the balls that they miss that are off the plate, everybody is looking at them like, what are you doing? You just have to go up there and throw strikes. I think Buck Britton will have a great mentality for this. It's not quite as heartwarming last year as seeing Adley Rutschman's dad throw to him, but it's still an awesome story. I'm excited for Buck, and I'm excited for Gunnar to be able to compete in this.
Yeah, you just wanted to go, you don't want him to go up there and throw
Just
balls.
Just don't be too big. Don't let the spotlight make you too nervous. Just don't embarrass yourself, basically.
That the thing is like, this is a huge spotlight. He is. I think.
Oh, it is.
People don't realize this, and like how, like going back to last year, Adley Rutschman's dad, Randy, the fact he was able to groove in strikes like that to his son with 50,000 people in the stadium,
and how many more watching on TV
at home, like the pressure in that situation is immense.
Yeah.
And for a guy that Randy was a coach, but it's not like he was a pro, he's not used to this level. And Buck, his brother was a all-star, I think.
He was.
He's been in the minors for a long time. He played in the minors. This is still the biggest spotlight Buck Britton has ever been.
Yeah, and until he gets a big league job, which I think could be coming at some point in his career, this is, like you said, this is the biggest stage. He's going to be essentially introduced to the nation because there is a lot of pressure. There's a lot of eyes. It's going to be the loneliest place on the mound that mound will be in Texas if he struggles. But I wish him nothing but the best. Just get locked in, start cranking out strikes, and hopefully he knows the rules better than I do because I've already forgotten the rules for this year's home run derby. They messed with him again, and it's just going to go over my head. I'll just tune in and enjoy the show.
Yeah, you just want to see a good show, and hopefully for Gunnar's sake, for everyone's sake, they're healthy after it, and hopefully they have fun.
Yeah, exactly. At AF Kostka is Andy's Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. Give us a like, a thumbs up, write us a good review on Apple Podcasts, and I'll read it out here on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. And of course, you got to subscribe to the Baltimore Banner. Andy is waving incessantly. $1 for 6 months, where you can read all of Andy's work, all of Kyle Goon's great work, all of Danielle Allentuck's great work, all of that and much, much more. And we will have draft coverage as well, because that's around the corner, less than a week away, as John Mioli will have you covered there. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Banner Baseball Show. For Andy Kostka, I'm Paul Mancano.